There is a particular poverty that wears an expensive coat. It belongs to the man who has the number he once prayed for and feels nothing where the peace was supposed to be. He worked for it, he earned it, honestly and hard, and still late at night, when the house is quiet and the accounts are safe, a thin cold draught moves through him, the same draught that moved through the boy he used to be, and it whispers the oldest sentence he knows: not enough, not yet, not safe. You may know this draught. It does not care what you have. That is the strange, cruel genius of it. You can add a zero, and it waits. You can double the account, and it waits. Every threshold, you are certain, would finally be the one. The number that would let you exhale at last arrives and passes, and the exhale never comes because the thing that needed to relax was never in the account. It was in you. We are told that abundance is a quantity, that there is a line somewhere out ahead of us, and on the far side of that line the fear stops. So we spend our lives walking toward it, and the line, like the horizon, keeps its exact distance no matter how fast we walk. This is not a talk about earning more. You have tried earning more, and earning more did not touch the place that is afraid. This is something older and quieter, a walk into the wound underneath the wanting, and the strange truth the mystics and the psychologists both arrived at from opposite doors, that a man can be surrounded by gold and still starve, because the hunger was never really for gold. No one is born afraid of scarcity. The fear is taught early, and usually without a single word spoken about money at all. Somewhere in the house of your childhood you learned what money meant, not from a lesson, but from the air. Maybe you watched a parent's face change when the bills came, saw the jaw tighten, the shoulders climb, felt the whole weather of the home turn cold and careful. Maybe there was a season when there was not enough. And a child does not understand economics. A child only understands that the ground has become dangerous, that something is wrong, and that the wrongness has a name, the grown-ups say in low voices. Or maybe it was the opposite. Maybe money was the only language of love that ever reached you, the gift instead of the presence, the provision instead of the tenderness. And you learned, without ever deciding that to be worth something was to have something, that a person's value and a person's holdings were the same measurement, read off the same scale. Either way, a small and brilliant mind draws the only conclusion that will keep it safe. If I have enough, I will be safe. If I have enough, I will be loved. If I have enough, the cold draught will finally stop. And money, which is only paper and metal and numbers, is quietly appointed. To a throne it was never built to sit on. It is made to stand in for safety, for worth, for love, for the solid ground the child never got to stand on. Understand what happened, because it was not greed, it was intelligence. A child, facing an uncertain world, reached for the one lever that seemed to move the weather, and gripped it, and never let go. The accumulation that looks from the outside like ambition is often from the inside a frightened boy still trying to build a wall high enough that the fear cannot climb it. But the wall never gets high enough. That is the thing no one warns you about. Because the fear is not on the outside of the wall. It was sealed inside in the very first course of stones, and every fortune you add only builds the prison taller around it. Alan Watts saw the trick at the centre of this and named it with devastating simplicity. Money, he said, is not wealth. Money is a measurement of wealth. The way a menu is a description of a meal. The way inches are a measurement of length. And a starving man, handed a menu, is no less starving. You cannot eat the measurement. We have built a civilization, Watts said, of people so hypnotized by the numbers that they will let real wealth, the actual food and the actual work, and the actual hands willing to do it, sit idle because the measurement, the money, is said to be missing. A society standing in a warehouse full of bread, starving because it has run out of the tickets that count the bread. Sit with that because it is the whole disease in miniature. We confuse the symbol for the thing. We spend a life acquiring the description of a life and wonder why we are never fed. Carl Jung went underneath the economics into the soul and found something stranger still. He understood that gold has always been more than metal to the human psyche. The old alchemists, he said, were never really trying to make ordinary gold. Gold was their symbol for the self, for wholeness, for the incorruptible centre of a person that does not rust and cannot be taken. And here is the wound Jung would recognize in the anxious accumulator. Somewhere the sacred longing, the true longing for the inner gold, for wholeness, for the self, got confused with the outer kind. The man is genuinely seeking something holy. He has simply been reaching for it in the vault where it has never once been kept. He piles up the outer gold in the exact spot where the inner gold is missing, and the more he piles, the emptier the true place becomes, because he keeps feeding the wrong hunger and starving the right one. Jung had a name for what gathers around a wound like this: a complex, an autonomous charge in the psyche that takes on a life of its own, that hijacks the will. The money complex does not serve the man. The man serves it. He tells himself he is providing, securing, being responsible, and all the while an old fear is running the whole machine from the basement, and it will never, ever say the word enough, because its entire existence depends on the word never. Erich Fromm drew the line most cleanly of all. He said there are two ways to be alive in this world: the mode of having and the mode of being. In the having mode, your identity is the sum of your possessions. I am what I have. And so every loss is a small death. Every threat to the holdings is a threat to the self. And you can never rest, because possessions can always be lost. And a self made of possessions is therefore made of fear. In the mode of being, you are not what you have. You are what you are, what you love, what you attend to, what you give, the quality of your presence in a room. And a self made of being cannot be robbed, because there is nothing in the vault to take. The tragedy Fromm named is a whole culture that has forgotten the second mode exists, that has poured its entire sense of self into having, and then cannot understand why, with more than any generation before it, it feels so poor. And long before any of them, the old Taoist line said the same thing in 9 words. He who knows he has enough is rich. Not he who has much, he who knows he has enough. Wealth, in that sentence, is not a quantity out in the world. It is a knowing inside, and a man without that knowing is poor at any price. So here is the sentence the striving man does not want to hear. More will not fix this, because more was never the cure. More is the disease, wearing the mask of the cure. This is why the advice always fails him. Just make another million, and then you will feel secure. Just hit the next number, and then you will rest. He has heard it, he has believed it, he has organized his one and only life around it, and every time he arrives, the finish line has quietly moved, because a fear does not negotiate with evidence. You cannot out-earn a wound. The wound has no interest in your net worth. It feeds on the reaching, not on the result. Look closely at the machinery, because it is subtle, and it is everywhere. Scarcity does not soften as the pile grows. It scales. The man with a little lies awake over the rent. The man with much lies awake over the portfolio, the market, the thing that could take it all. He has not escaped the fear. He has simply given it more to guard. The having mode makes every gain into a new hostage. Now there is more to lose, more to protect, more to watch, and the watching is a second job that pays only in dread. And notice the cruelest part. The very grip that hoards cannot receive. A closed hand cannot be filled. The man who clutches everything can take in nothing, not a gift, not a kindness, not a good day given freely, by a world that asks nothing in return, because his whole nervous system is organized around holding, and a life is not held. A life is only ever passed through. So he stands in the middle of genuine abundance, sunlight and time, and people who would love him if he would stop. Counting, and he cannot taste any of it, because you cannot taste what you are too afraid to stop gripping. This is the reversal at the center of the money wound. The scarcity is not the amount you have. The scarcity is the eye that is looking. A frightened eye finds famine in a harvest. It cannot help it. It was trained long ago in a colder season to scan for what is missing, and it has never stopped scanning, and it will read lack into a life overflowing, because lack is not what it sees. Lack is how it sees. And some part of the man already knows. Some part suspects that no arrival will ever be the arrival, that the draught will follow him into any house he buys, that he is not walking towards safety, but away from himself, at speed calling the exhaustion success. He knows, and still he cannot stop, because to stop feels like exposure, like standing in the old dangerous weather with nothing in his hands, and to the frightened boy inside him, empty hands still mean death. For most men who live this way, the change does not come as a decision. It comes as a kind of ruin. Not always a financial ruin, though sometimes it is exactly that. More often it is a quieter collapse. The number finally arrives, the one that was going to be the one, and he stands there in the achieved dream and feels the same cold draught move through the same empty room. And something in him breaks, because there is no next number that can save him now. He has run out of road. He has bought the far side of the horizon, and the horizon is still ahead of him, and he understands all at once with a grief that has no bottom, that it always will be. The mystics called this the dark night of the soul. Jung would have called it the necessary death, the collapse of a false centre, so that a true one can be born. And here, exactly here, in the place that feels like losing everything, something turns. Because what is dying is not the man. What is dying is the arrangement, the frightened deal he made as a boy, that having would equal safety is finally, mercifully, falling apart. And its death feels like his death only because he mistook it for himself for so long. He lets go not because he has become wise, but because there is nothing left to hold with. And in the letting go he discovers the thing the grip could never let him feel, that he is still here, that he was never actually the pile, that the ground he spent his life trying to buy was under his feet the entire time, free, and he could not feel it because he was never once standing still. This is the turn the mystics point to when they speak of poverty. Meister Eckhart, 7 centuries ago, said the most dangerous and beautiful thing, that the truly rich soul is the one that has become poor in spirit, empty, open, holding nothing, and therefore able to receive everything. He called it letting go, releasement, the open hand. Not the poverty of the man who has nothing and wants everything. The poverty of the man who has stopped clutching and finds, to his astonishment, that an open hand is the only kind of hand that anything can actually be placed into. The clenched fist keeps the world out. The open palm lets the world move through. And a life, it turns out, was always meant to be moved through, not stored. And in that opening something the man has not felt since before the counting began begins to return. Not the thrill of gain, something steadier and older, the plain, astonishing sufficiency of a single ordinary hour, enough breath, enough light, enough, the word, the fear, could never say, arriving on its own the moment he stopped chasing it. There is an old truth this striving never believe until the striving itself has failed them. Abundance was never a sum you arrive at. It was a way of standing in the world, available the instant you stop mistaking the measurement for the meal. The wealthy man and the peaceful man are not the same man, and the whole quiet catastrophe of a life can be spent confusing the two. Watts saw that the point of money, like the point of a menu, is to be spent, to be moved, to point beyond itself to the actual feast, and that to hoard it is to sit at the table reading the card and calling it dinner. Jung saw that the gold worth seeking was never in the vault, that the true treasure is the self-made whole, and that a man will chase it in the world for 50 years before he thinks to look in the one. Place it was always kept. Fromm saw that you are not what you have, you are what you are, and that everything real about a life, the loving, the making, the giving, the being here, belongs entirely to the mode the frightened man forgot. The mystic and the psychologist meet, in the end, in the same plain room. Both of them stop trying to fill the emptiness and begin instead to let it be open. The complex loosens its grip on the will. The gold turns back into a symbol and points, at last, inward. And the man who spent his life afraid of not having enough discovers the thing the fear worked so hard to keep from him. That he was already, the whole time, standing in more than he could ever hold. So if you are the man in the expensive coat, cold, this is not one more thing to achieve. Not a new number, not a better strategy, not enlightenment earned the way you earned everything else, by force, which would only be the grip again, wearing a robe. Only this: the next time the draught moves through you and whispers, "Not enough," do not rush to answer it with more. Only turn and look at it and see how old it is. See the frightened boy who learned, in a colder season, that empty hands meant death. He did a wise and holy thing to survive, and he does not have to hold the whole world any more. You can open your hands now, not to lose what you have, to finally be able to feel it. The enough you have been chasing your entire life was never a number out ahead of you. It was the ground you were already standing on.